Morning, guys.
Morning.
Thanks for coming along. Here we are in Ben and Jack's studio in Maidenhead, using their incredible facility. So thanks to the guys for that. We said we'd have a chat and get together, and here we are. So probably the best thing to do is start off with some introduction. So, Mark.
Well, I'm Mark. I founded Woven Technology Consultants a couple of years ago. Prior to that, I've been working in the integration industry and luxury property for, sad to say, 25 years now, which is making me feel a little bit old.
I think I've known you most that time as well. So,
Vintage, yeah, mature.
Yes. I feel the maturity as well. But, cool. Thank you, Mark.
And I'm Sam Brunsden, and I formed Dyntec a couple of years ago, which is specialised in the resi and commercial markets for consultancy. And I did that after spending a good sort of 18 years in the integrator industry.
We're actually probably middle of the road in terms of age groups, because if you think about our industry, there was like the founding fathers, weren't there? Remember the senior guys that we can name those people, we know who they are. And they're slowly kind of like winding down now, and then we're like the middle tier coming through now that are probably doing it our own way slightly with their...
I like how you throw me in your bands.
Yeah, but so I am slightly older than you, Sam, I'll deal with that. And then you've got the young upstarts coming through, probably revolutionise everything again and change it all again. But so what made you guys go from sort of one side, not one side of the fence, but moving from being a traditional integrator to doing what you do now? So we're seeing more consultants being involved in projects. I think it's been more prevalent in commercial up until now, but we're seeing it residential. So open to both of you, but what made you make the switch?
I think there's a real need to, make the design specification stage more professional. So I think you've got that professional independence in the commercial world, and Sam's been far more involved in that than I have, but certainly from a residential perspective, it's being able to come in and represent the client's needs, requirements from the outset, really get an understanding of how they're going to live in their house, what their staff are going to need to help make it as an enjoyable place to live as possible. Trying to avoid just the same routine of this is what you're getting, this is what this house in this location should have, this is what someone of your wealth should have. They shouldn't be like that. Every person is unique, all their requirements are unique. So really delving into that, making the tender process fair, rather than it being out to an integrator. Yeah, integrators do a great job, and this isn't knocking what they do, but being out to an integrator, they do the design, it goes out to tender, the bill of materials is geared to what they typically offer. That's not really giving the client a fair stab at a level playing field in terms of pricing, in terms of what's available out there. Really trying to disrupt that, and then from the construction side, going through and being able to represent a client through that. So instead of signing off your own homework, actually having someone else there who can and is qualified and experienced enough to go through and be able to review drawings, review specifications, witness test properly the system before it's handed over, be able to comment and work with the integrators to make sure that the client is actually getting what they signed up for at the start.
Thank you. Sam, anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, so from my side, I think we all know in the residential industry, consultancy's always been done by integrators, and that's just how it's always been done. And I think that stems back probably to the original, like you're talking about, founding fathers. The work was always shared. There was only a few companies involved. They were developing the industry together. So they kind of shared ideas and training and all those good things. But so after my days at T&L, I moved into the consultancy market. I wanted to step inside the commercial market and see how that things were done. And I had my eyes open to actually how different it is. And what you have in the commercial market is you have consultants and you have integrators, and the two do not cross. And it's like how it's always been in that field. And these companies have been around for a long, long time. So this isn't a new idea in the commercial world. It's been there a long time. And the way it works is that, integrators do the installations, they tender, they bid, and they deliver the work. And then consultants, that's all they do is design and consult for projects, making sure the clients are getting precisely what they want for the project. And when I was working in that field, I was kind of like, why don't we do this in the residential world? We're doing it in the CEO's property, their offices, but we're not doing it in their homes. And that's what made me start to think about starting Dyntec, because I was like, I wanted to bring that kind of independent view into the residential industry. But we're trying to change something that's been kind of in like concrete for so long, because of the last 20 years, if you want to have a project done and you want consultancy, you go to an integrator. But would you go to a structural engineer and get their view if they sold you the concrete? No. So why do we do it with technology? It's probably the only industry in the world where consultants are also selling you the products. And if you think about any other industry where we have consultants, that never happens. So that's kind of why I delved into it.
No, fair enough then. So do you think that... Yeah, because at the moment integrators are specifying those projects and do you think there's a bit of impartiality perhaps then in what they're doing, or...?
I think there's a lack of impartiality, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And that's human nature, and it's driven by multiple factors. It's what you're comfortable with. It's what technology that you're comfortable with. Why change from doing something a particular way if you're comfortable with it? Even if something new comes along or slightly different approach comes along, why change? You're trained in this way. Let's stick to this road. Impartiality also, you get your lack of impartiality is driven by your margin. Where are you making your money? Sam and I make our money from being offering our professional opinion and doing professional design work. We know integrators will make money from selling equipment and from installing that equipment. Now, clearly, not all hardware has the same margin. So there is naturally going to be a certain amount of bias to selling certain hardware or selling a certain amount of hardware to make sure a project is profitable enough. If all of the, or if a proportion of the profit and target profit turnover is based on the margin of the hardware.
Okay, all right. So as for disclosure, obviously I'm a distributor. We have CABD, we're a distributor. So my interest is really how best we can help serve effectively the end client, really. We're one step removed, obviously, being a distributor rather than being an integrator as well, or a consultant. So how best then in a changing market, and we've got a bit more involved in the commercial market recently with some of the projects that we've been involved with, and I see the process is slightly different. Probably more streamlined. So probably slightly easier to work in some respects. Not quite so. In some respects, yeah. Not quite so emotionally driven. It's more factual driven, which I like that as well, because it's there's measurables in place that you can. It's not quite so emotionally driven. How best then do you think a distributor like us, which is my key aim really, in trying to talk to you guys and see how the market changes and evolves, what could we do best to serve the integrators, the consultants, and ultimately the end clients? What do you suggest we could do, or is there something we do right, we don't do right? Specifically to CABD, and maybe more broad. I'll open that question up to see what the industry isn't doing right.
What could you do different? I think it's education. I was thinking about this the other day, and I never have seen myself as a teacher, but as I've got older, I've actually seen the value in being able to educate people. So, as well as being a consultant and out talking with interior designers, architects, and trying to educate them about technology generally and how that can influence a home, help a home, make it more efficient. I also have a small holding, and I make cider, and we grow fruit and vegetables, and have a market garden and sell that. So the other day, somebody came along to buy some fruit. They'd never come across a green gauge before, because it's a type of fruit that you don't see in supermarkets. By then, I'm out there educating people about these different varieties. about cider, different types of cider, real cider. So education, I think, is really, really valid. So if you can be out there educating integrators, end users through demonstrations as to why something should be done in a particular way, what's the benefit of this? I think that has a lot of value. I mean, what about you, Sam?
I do agree. I think it's quite funny. Like when I go back 20 years when we started this, when I was a young sort of engineer and you're working on site, the amount of things we used to learn, and there was none of this kind of standardization that we have today. Like, now if you get a product and you go, right, what API have you got? Does it work on OP? There's this really nice understanding between how things work. That wasn't the case years ago. Most of your time went in trying to make products work together. And I think one of the biggest things we've lost in our industry over the last 20 years is engineering, like that kind of technical education level. Years ago, like when I used to work with colleagues, I was always impressed by how much people understood, even from an audio point of view. They really understood audio. They understood the standards, why we did things a certain way. These days, I think companies and integrators have become more like fitters because you've taken away a lot of the programming, complexity in some systems now. We go to site, engineers are fitting things on walls, that's where I think we've gone. And there's a huge reliance, I think, on other people designing systems. I know that a lot of distributors do offer design services, but that's not something that we should be reliant upon. And the engineering should always be in-house. I mean, if you outsource your design, surely you're outsourcing your value as a business. So I think education is something the industry isn't progressing with as much. Now, if you step into the commercial market, the big difference I would say between the two markets is that they approach projects with a real professional manner. There's a lot more training that goes on. You've got things like a VIXA, CTS, CTSD that all people work towards, and there's a lot of compliance as well on projects. And that's where they are different. They're not steered as much on profit margins of product. That's why if you're selling Crestron or you're selling something like Logitech where there's a huge margin difference, they're okay with that because they're making money on the engineering and their professional approach on projects, their expertise. And I think that where the market's going in the future, I think the margins will get cut. I think that's kind of where it's going to go because demand's increasing. So I think that if you base your business model on purely profit margins and not your expertise, your business model is not going to work for the future.
Well, we do see margins eroding already. Certainly, I can say distribution margin is being cut in an effort to compete with probably, let's be honest, they're probably quite saturated as a market, aren't we, in terms of offering. You guys can go to get any... There's a lot of good speakers out there as well. You've got a lot of choice. Another one comes to the market, you think, another speaker brand. But I was going to say a couple of things. Firstly, I think the knowledge breadth of an integrator now has to be so broad. Probably, 15, 20 years ago, if you went to an AV company, they'd know a bit about, they knew about audio generally. If you go to a 2-channel hi-fi shop, let's take a classic scenario. There's still some there, and you see a revival sometimes, but they knew about that specialization at audio. But I suppose as technology's evolved and projects have got bigger and bigger, I've always seen it that the integrator has to have such a broad knowledge, whether it's, security, HVAC, lighting, control systems, all those things are so much more involved in the project now. So if you're a small team, it must be almost, just take an integrated view for a second here, they must be very difficult to be an absolute master in all those things and then, be a networking guy and be an audio specialist. They're so far apart, aren't they?
I think that it's happening because certain aspects of our business are changing, though.
Right.
If you go back 20 years, people don't probably remember all of this, but we used to put a lot of touch panels in. I used to go in and we used to put a touch panel on every room. When we had the old Crestron CT, what were they called? CT1000s? Yeah. GTS 2000s. We used to put one in every single room. Then the iPad came out. That diminished the market. Video distribution. We used to put video distribution and we used to put massive matrices in cabinets, sometimes a whole cabinet doing composite video distribution.
Gotcha.
Now people have Apple TV and stream their apps.
Yeah, true.
What you're finding is there's elements of our industry that are diminishing over time.
True.
And people are adding more things to the portfolio.
Yeah.
So people go, right, we'll now do more networking. Okay, we might get involved in HVAC. Right, we might do BMS in-house. People are adding more to their sort of bow as such because they need to, obviously they don't want to lose the value of what they're doing. But I do feel like there's a lack of maybe knowledge across all of those disciplines. Like,
I think you have the value in, say, the larger integrators. Now, there are some integrators out there who are 30, 40, 50, 100 people strong. And they have dedicated divisions. So they'll have window treatment specialists, and that's all they do. Window treatments, lighting design specialists, that's all they do is lighting design. Networking, really splitting that into the specialisms. And it's hard to be, to offer such a broad portfolio of products and be an absolute specialist in all of them. I think there's value in partnering with specialists. So if you haven't got, actually, let me give an example. I think certainly with security, security is quite often offered as a siloed systems. Now, so you've got your access control, your intruder alarm, and your CCTV. Those are security as a whole, and they will work better and offer a more secure solution, or secure solution may be going too far, but they will offer a better user experience, better interface, better reporting if they can be connected together. And they can be connected together, but it's difficult to do that if you've got an intruder alarm company that's doing the intruder alarm. CCTV, well, the integrator might be doing the CCTV. Access control might be done by the gate company or might be done by the integrator. But those systems might not be talking to each other. So how do you actually, a client wants to review footage from, Sam coming through the gate. Is actually Sam coming through the gate? They've used Sam's credentials. Actually, no, they've just seen Jamie come through there. What's going on? You can do that with a properly integrated solution, specialist solution. But that needs a level of specialism that might actually sit outside of an integrator's natural ecosystem.
So where's that line drawn then? We're kind of coming to that point. You've got the end client, you've got consultants that your role's defined in terms of you have no allegiance necessarily to what's going into the kit. You want to give the client the best experience. Then you've got the integrators, and then you've got us as distributors / manufacturers. Let's just call them lump in one.
Yes.
We are effectively trade supply. If you're a massive company, you may have no distribution. If you're smaller company, you have distribution. And let's be honest, some of the massive companies still have distribution. Some of the big companies, Samsung, etc., still have distribution. So where do you think then, where are we going? Or where are we and where do you think we should go, or where are we going in terms of where do the levels of responsibility stop in each of those scenarios? And,
I think it's always been quite loose in the residential world.
Yeah.
I think this is where I think we've been in a bubble. I think integrators, have been in a bubble for a bit of time because it's been very normal. You've got a project, an architect quite often used to lead those projects and project manage it internally. They would go to an integrator that would do consultancy, quite often for free these days. And then it kind of all gets put together. But what we're seeing now is over the last 5 years, projects are having more of a commercial approach. You're seeing more larger sort of PMQS companies coming into the residential market. They're popping up all over the place now. Architects aren't managing the projects now. They're out, that project management QS side is being done by a separate firm. Everybody's having their roles defined. And this is why I think that there's a bit of a change coming with the integrator's role. I think it's going to turn into, or certainly what I'm seeing is it is already changing into what it is in the commercial world. Okay, you will have a design team. You will have project managers as part of those, and then you will have subcontractors under a main contractor. And, we're already seeing that in the resi world, but actually we're doing this because, a lot of these projects we're working on are of a commercial size. The spend is there. And actually what it's doing is defining responsibilities, making sure the people that are designing are insured to design and are certified to design, and people are being chosen on their right skill sets to do the job. So integrators that, have the right teams in place and the right personnel with the right training and certifications of delivering the project as it's intended. So I think, for for many years, it's been very loose in the responsibilities, but it's changing.
Okay.
And I think it's going to make it very simple for everybody. How many times has an integrator been on a project where they've done the consultancy and they've defined, what speaker system's going in the cinema, what projector, what screen size, et cetera, and they've had 2 bids back that are like for like, apples for apples, and then a third's come in, and it's 30% lower, and it's different product. But the integrator always says, oh, but it's exactly the same performance. Well, we all know there's various different types of performance, right? It comes down to components quite often. We're going to stop that. We want to make sure that everything's compliant when it comes back as a bid.
To play devil's advocate just for a second, though, what if the customer does want to value engineer something? As long as they're given the reasons for the change and the compromise because of that, that's fair game, right?
It's completely up to them.
Yeah.
I mean, we always estimate the project throughout the stages.
Right.
So the client's always understanding where that bid return is going to come back from, so that we always say, look, it's going to be around this sort of value. We take into consideration profit margins, not just of product, but also, I was quoting systems for a very long time as an integrator, so I understand profit margins that AB integrators need to make. So I make sure that the estimates I provide the client are accurate. If they get a bid come back and it is 30% lower and they want to entertain it, we will take them on a journey and make them understand what the, negatives are going to be of that, if there are it.
Okay. Oh.
So it's, it should be fluid. And I think that there's probably a very common theme that AV integrators aren't quite often liking me and Mark coming into this industry, but think of it a different way. When an integrator does consultancy, it's usually very loose in the design. There's not quite often a bill of materials they're working to, because let's face it, integrators are keeping it vague because they want the project. So
Right.
Whereas from me and Mark, they will get a detailed specification, a bill of materials that's accurate, and they know that when they're bidding for that project, it's apples from everyone. And people, the right people are being picked for the job. So if I was an integrator and I had someone like Mark as the consultant on a project, well, one, I would spend less time bidding for it because I'm going to have an accurate job rather than spending 2 weeks designing it internally like I used to. And I know that if I lose that job, I've lost it. Sorry, fair and square. Fair and square, combine. So I see it as a benefit, but